On a challenge day, it's a really busy day. It can be stressful. I think people don't realise just how much planning goes into the day. And I actually say to people, the easiest part of a challenge day is in the eating. The eating is the easy part. Everything else is where the difficulty lies, at least it does for me. Hi, my name is Nick. I go by the name online as LiftingWeightsCleaningPlates, and I am a food challenge content creator. So I grew up in a place called Edgware, which is northwest London, and I grew up in the 80s and the early 90s, so life was really, really different. Typical family, mum and dad. I've got one brother who's older as well, but obviously there was no internet, there was no social media, nothing like that. So it was a fairly typical childhood in those times, going out on your bike and not always being contactable, so there was no mobile phones or anything. I don't even remember the first time I got a mobile phone, but life was pretty ordinary for that time. When I started watching or started getting interested in food challenge content there wasn't that many people doing it. Okay, so thinking back, I was watching Randy, Beard Meets Food, Eric the Electric, Furious Pete. These are old school creators, right? So I was a big fan of those guys back then. Although I never really thought about actually doing challenges myself, I've got to say, until much, much later on that I noticed that they were popping up a lot more local to where I was. So I wouldn't have to travel that far just to give it a go. And I remember I took on one at a barbecue place in London called the Red Dog Saloon. They had a Devastator burger there, which looking back on it, it looked pretty damn big. Probably moderate now for the standards that we're working within, but it was big for me then. And I took that on and I completed it, and I thought, this is something I quite enjoy. I didn't do anything for a long time after that. Then I did another one that Beard Meets Food did in Northampton, which again isn't that far for me to go, and I wrote my brother-in-law and actually to come and try that with me because he fancied it. Sadly he didn't complete it, but I managed to, and I thought, do you know what, I really do enjoy this. So I'm currently over here in the US, and I'm going to be here for 7 days, and during that 7 days I'm going to be taking on 4 challenges, because obviously it's quite a commitment coming over to the US anyway. I've got a young family and I'm married, so I have responsibilities there. So whilst I'm here, I need to maximize the opportunity and basically get as much content as I can for the channel. On a challenge day, it's a really busy day. At least it is for me, because I want to get my training in. I want to make sure that I've got everything ready and set up, and if I need to travel to location, I need to factor that in. I've got to think about the setup process, how long that's going to take, especially when there's the variables that I can't control, and I've got to think on the fly as to how I'm going to make things work. It can take a bit longer, it can be very, very quick. There's a lot of work that goes into the preparation behind the scenes in terms of leading up to challenge, sort of giving the restaurant owners an idea of how the day's going to plan out, or how I'd like it to, and how I'm going to film it. I've always known that I struggle with sort of overthinking, and I'm typically a very anxious person anyway. So my itinerary, I'm very, very meticulous, right? So I make a lot of lists. So I have exact times of what I need to do and when I need to do it. And it makes me feel comfortable and more relaxed that I know that I've got time to do everything I want to do. So I'm going to get to the gym at this time. Where is the gym in relation to where I'm staying? So there's a lot of research that needs to be done ahead of time. So I'm going to get there at this time. I'm going to work out for this long. It gives me this amount of time to get back, and it just proceeds from there. So I think people don't realise just how much planning goes into the day. Not least that I've then got to get there and I've got to actually eat the food and make the content. And I actually say to people, the easiest part of a challenge day is in the eating. The eating is the easy part. Everything else is where the difficulty lies, at least it does for me. So on a day where I'm doing a food challenge, it always starts the same way. I'm very consistent with my fitness anyway, so regardless of whether I was doing a challenge or not, the start of my day would widely be the same. So I will get up very early. I will start with a 45-minute bike session as my cardio. I will then take a few minutes to have some hydration. I'll have a little walk for maybe 10-15 minutes, and then I'll go straight into a lifting session. So I will then spend between 45 minutes or an hour lifting, depending on what the rotation is that day for my training split. I really enjoy the training and the preparation leading up to a challenge, because I treat it very much like I'm going on stage. It's that anticipation and that knowing that the consistency is going to pay off. So I'm somebody that's always been really, really focused on my fitness, and it's something that really resonated with me from pretty much a young age. So from my mid-20s, I got really focused on training and fitness as being a priority in my life. And I think when it got to the stage that I realized that there was a certain amount of dieting involved with it, I mean, I competed a couple of times in my past, and I've done multiple prep periods for photo shoots and things. So I had to find ways of staying satiated, but eating very low calorie dense foods. And I think through that experimentation and having a big appetite anyway, I mean, my mum's Italian, so I grew up eating a lot of Italian food and we were always well fed. I think I just started to push the boundaries and really identify how much I was able to eat. The challenges work well with the fitness pursuits because they are a way of maintaining that calorie balance. My high calories are coming from that individual meal, which I'm using for content creation, but also for my own indulgence because I'm enjoying it, right? So it kind of balances the books in that respect. And then I will finish off with another 4 or 5 kilometer walk. And that is pretty much all the activity I would need on any regular day anyway. And that certainly starts to get me hungry. I perform best when I arrive at the table absolutely ravenous. The hungrier I am, the better chance I have of actually completing the challenge. You never really know when you get into a venue what you're going to be up against in terms of where you're going to be seated, other people in the restaurant, the lighting. There are certain variables that you can't control, but I do enjoy sort of getting there really well, as much ahead of schedule as I can to sort of plan out where I'm going to sit, how it's going to go, and how it's going to look on camera. So that's a process that I actually genuinely enjoy. It can be stressful, but I think it's an important part of the content creation. I think a lot of content creators, you know, they will have pretty limited equipment, just what they need. You know, they'll rock up, they'll have their camera and off they go, or a microphone and a camera, maybe even a second camera. I come in with a flight bag like full of equipment, right? So I'd rather have it and not need it than need it and not have it. But I've got 2 main cameras. I've got my GoPro, which I use for reactions. I've got my lighting, I've got 2 lots of audio so that I've got a backup one if I need it. I mean, there's a lot of gear, right? And I don't think a lot of restaurants, you know, kind of expect that, especially when they've had content creators in the past that have come in with just a mobile phone, but they're normally quite widely receptive of it. And that's why I preemptively get in contact to say, look, you know, I need to get there ahead of time to set up equipment, and that's fine, they understand. Very often I will go into a restaurant to set up for a challenge and say, look, just so that you know, yeah, I'm going to be a little bit overbearing and overwhelming, and I don't mean to be.
From the UK, he's here to do the breakfast challenge. This man is lifting weights and cleaning plates.
No pressure at all.
Alright, so Nick has a 16-inch pancake, a dozen eggs, which
I've actually added some food to it. I've added to the breakfast,
he decided to go crazy and get scrambled with cheese. Double the cheese.
which I thought would be quite nice. Add some cheese to the scrambled eggs.
And he has half a pound of home fries, 2 orders of toast, sides of bacon, kielbasa, ham, and sausage.
Blueberry pancake. You add blueberries to the pancake.
To finish off with it's like a dessert at the end, right?
Let's see what he's got.
How long have I got?
You've got 30 minutes.
30 minutes.
The time
So look.
starts now.
Oh.
My favourite part of the eating challenges is, quite obviously, for me, it's the eating in itself. I really enjoy that. Though it's worth pointing out, I do overthink a lot of things. So even during the eating, it's very hard to switch off entirely mentally, because I'm thinking how it's going to look on the final edit. Am I talking enough? Am I talking too much? You know, does the food look good on camera? So there's that inability to be 100% focused on enjoying the food, but that's fine. That's part of the process. I personally think it's really important to be yourself. You know, when you're putting yourself on camera, you need to just be authentic and genuine, because if you're trying to play a role or contrive your content or the way you're coming across, you know, people will pick up on that and they'll see it. So yeah, that's something I feel very confident in being able to say, but I'm just myself on camera.
Now, is there a reason that your right eye closes when you're eating?
In my early 20s, I developed something called Bell's palsy, and it was basically a facial paralysis, right, where one side of my face, the nerves had essentially died off. And although it's quite common, it typically doesn't have any residual side effects, and it lasts about 3 months. Now, in my case, it was a very acute onset, and because it wasn't diagnosed and treated quick enough, the damage was much worse than typically would otherwise be seen. So one side of my face actually was completely immobile for 18 months. And that was really tricky, you know, just sort of dealing with that in social situations, especially in my early 20s, you know, it's very difficult. It did get to a point where the movement was coming back, but I went through a period of what's known as synkinesis, which is the regeneration of nerve cells, but they cause involuntary muscle contractions. Okay, so you wouldn't necessarily see it in everyday life and talking, but for example, when I yawn, my right eye closes. There's nothing I can do about that, right? But you wouldn't necessarily see that every day. Now, when I'm doing my food challenges and I'm eating lots of food, or if it's spicy food, or if I'm trying to chew my way through a mouthful of food, you'll notice my eye will shut or involuntarily, and a lot of the time it will water. So you'll see I've always got my towel with me. You do get some people that make some, you know, nasty remarks and things, but listen, I'm old enough now, and it's one of those things where I said, it's just not that important. I'm able to put myself on camera, still knowing that I have this, you know, this difference in the way I look and this abnormality, but listen, what you see is what you get.
That was incredible. That was delicious.
Amazing.
I'm telling you, the cheesy eggs, don't sleep on the cheesy eggs.
So he did it in 13 minutes and 7 seconds. So he gets a hoodie, and a mug.
Amazing, and a free meal, a really good free meal. That was sensational. Guys, thank you so much. I appreciate your support. Thank you guys for watching.
When you see me on camera doing the challenges, I'm totally myself, unapologetically just me. I'm clumsy, I'm awkward, I say all kinds of things, but that's just me. You know, I'm not putting on a show, I'm not putting on an act. And I think, you know, having grown up, sometimes feeling like a bit of an outcast and a bit of the odd one out, and I think that does come from, you know, the ADHD side of things, and not really feeling, and in my adult life now, not really feeling totally comfortable in social situations. I've come to accept it. And those that know me well, like my wife and, you know, close family and friends, they know who I am. But outside of that, you know, I still feel a little bit awkward. So being in front of the camera is just a great opportunity for me to just be myself and to just feel confident and have fun. So I think that's actually where the real pleasure comes. Okay, I was raised by an Italian mother, and you never go anywhere without taking a gift or presenting something. So I think recognition is really important. So when I go to a venue, I always make sure that I take a goodie bag for the staff afterwards, you know, just a selection of sweets and biscuits and whatever it might be. It's just a nice gesture. And I think that's really, really important. And that's a big part of who I am. I like to give and I like to make people happy. And yeah, I think that's really important.
I think that went pretty good. I really enjoyed that. It's always good when there's loads of engagement and like people are really receptive. And the food tasted great as well. I really enjoyed that. I knew I would. So what we're going to do now, we're going to go back to the Airbnb because I've got to charge the equipment.
Talking about going on a tour, for example, I know that the next day I'm going to need that equipment, right? So as soon as I'm able to, I need to get back to my apartment or wherever I'm staying, and I need to get that gear charged up and ready to go again the next day. Once the challenge is over, I will immediately go back to hydration because there's a certain amount of processes involved with digestion. You do get dehydrated after challenges as well, especially when you come in so depleted. So hydration is really important, and I will go for another walk. So anywhere again between 4 or 5 kilometers just to start processing the food and aiding that digestion. When I do a challenge that's, you know, high carbohydrate, for example, like a big mac and cheese or whatever it might be, I really enjoy my training for the next week after that because my glycogen's been restored, my energy levels are back up. You know, I'll go in the next day, I'll get a really good pump in the gym. So I actually think there's some benefit to be derived from the challenges. I am a big believer that if you're going to go on a challenge, and certainly for my fitness pursuits, I like to digest the food, I like to enjoy it, right? And I know that, you know, not every content creator is the same way, but I've never made myself involuntarily physically sick after a challenge, despite how uncomfortable I feel. I will just ride it out. I have had some very difficult periods of digestion or post-challenge where the digestion process has been really tricky, but I've done enough challenges now to know which ones those are. So things that are very heavy on protein side, like heavy meat challenges. So if I've done a very rich barbecue challenge, for example, I've done a couple of those, it's a bit of a grueling digestion process. So, you know, very uncomfortable, very heavy, very lethargic. And typically I'll find myself having to sleep sometimes upright on those, which can be, you know, something I've had to experience. There have been some that have really made me so dehydrated that throughout the course of the evening, so throughout the course of the night before the next day, I've actually managed to get through anywhere up to 6 liters of fluid just through the course of the night following a challenge because of that dehydration level. So that can be quite an uncomfortable feeling, but it is all transient, and you know, any food that you take on or any fluids, they will eventually pass as long as you go back to that level of consistency, either with your activity or with your eating routine. If it's a single challenge, depending on how I feel later that day, I might afford myself another meal. It will just be my opportunity to say, right, well, listen, you've indulged today, have something that you fancy or something you're really craving, because I know that I'm going to get back onto my regular routine and pattern of eating. So it's kind of my opportunity to just let loose a little bit. When I'm on a tour, it's a little bit different because there are back-to-back challenges. So if I know I'm going to do a challenge the next day, it's really important to get that level of activity up. So I might do an extra walk after that post-challenge walk. So I'll do that. I might have a bit of time in between and then go for another walk if I need to. Again, it's just to aid digestion. I certainly won't eat anything again after that because obviously I want to get myself to a point where I'm at maximum capacity and have those hunger levels again ready for the next day. I'd like to keep doing this for as long as I can. I think as long as it's not taking too much away from other responsibilities and commitments I've got in life, then I'm happy to keep doing it. And as long as I'm still getting a net positive in terms of pleasure, I'll keep doing it. You like that? Is that okay? Well, I hope so.
You did an unbelievable job.